So we'll move on to our 7.4, consideration of task force ad hoc committee to add Article 73 to Chapter 21 of Lake County zoning ordinance to address commercial cannabis permitting activities and enforcement. And this one will be conducted by our Community Development Director, Mary Darby, who should be joining us via Zoom. There she is.
Oh, we can see your lips moving, but didn't hear anything.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. Good to see you today. I'm going to present today the proposal for a task force or ad hoc committee to add Article 73 to Chapter 21 of the Lake County zoning ordinance to address commercial cannabis permitting activities and enforcement. I would like to start with a video that was created from our May 25th and May 26th cannabis workshops. And so if Sam could assist me with playing that, please.
Hello, welcome to the Cannabis Workshops. The hope is that this is going to be interactive, so you can move from table to table to table, and you have a subject matter expert at each table that you can go over different issues or concerns or input. At each table, you'll see the presentation that we conducted yesterday. You'll have a copy of the ordinance itself, the draft ordinance number 1. Thank you, Kim. If you look at Kim, you'll see things that are being held up here. And we also have a sign-in sheet and actual comment cards. So what we're going to do is we divided the table up into 6 different categories. The categories are table 1, we're going to be reviewing trees, habitat, energy, and table 1's right here, energy and greenhouses. And we have our consultants here. So we have Kim Hunter and Melissa, what shall I say, Melissa? Frosco? Okay, Frosco here at table 1. And so at every table, there will be a different category of issues that we can go over in terms of the cannabis ordinance. I am going to be the general table, so any questions you have about the ordinance in general, you can see me. At this particular table, table 1, we also have the Woodland Oaks ordinance that was adopted. And I think at table 6, we have the fire safety standards as well. And table 4, thank you. At table 2, you have hydrology, the drought management plan, which is here at table 2. You have Andrew Amelong. At table 3 back here, you have Laura Hall and Byron Turner, and they are outreach and recycling, so hydroponics, any type of recycling. At table 4, you back here, raise your hand, table 4. That's our chief building official, so you'll have fire and life safety standards that you can review with him. At table 5, we have code enforcement. We have our code enforcement manager, which is Marcus Beltramo, but we also have our cannabis program code officer, Linda Rosas Bill. So she's at that table to discuss anything, whether or not it is legal cannabis or illegal cannabis, that all can happen at that table. And table 6, we've designed for our temporary cannabis events for retail use, if you're interested in any of that, as well as generators.
We were hoping that the county would consider micro businesses on land that has been previously not allowed to have a micro business because of zoning issues. For a cultivator, the best case scenario where we can actually have a business that is successful and succeeds is to be able to process, package, and market our own product. It takes the middleman out and essentially keeps the money in the farm where it's needed.
So my question was for weed tours. So I have a cannabis license for retail and delivery. So I know that we cannot sell from the farm, but am I allowed to bring a vehicle, which is approved by the state, to do a live delivery to a private residence, which wouldn't be the canopy, it would be outside the cannabis. Can they consume it at the house or at a designated area, and would they be able to go inside to the cannabis field and take photos, not consumption, photos?
He's been in the process for 4 years. His brother was one of the first ones at the courthouse when they were only giving 15 permits for the whole county. He's just going to his permit hearing tomorrow. So for 1 acre, and we were just talking about if there were thresholds based on the level of impact and the amount of canopy being grown, people might get through the process faster.
Hi, my name is Adam Moody, and what we were talking about today was potentially doing things a little bit quicker by doing them in parallel instead of having them happen consecutively. And we were hoping that we could introduce an at-risk waiver and a mod fee addendum that would allow for the risk to sit with the applicant so that we could start putting building permits through before we waited for our license applications to get completed. That way we weren't basically going through one process only to start another one. Like other businesses, non-cannabis businesses, we were hoping we could do those processes in parallel, and that way we could speed up the total licensing period to operation.
Okay, so go ahead. You go ahead and tell me what issue you were covering.
Hi, I'm Kristen Callahan, a farmer in Middletown, California, and I am talking with Byron, who I met when I first started my project way back in 2016 or 17, and we're talking about some of the ordinance topics. We're really focused on big picture, like retail and sinking the money back into our Lake County community and how we can build our ordinance around, instead of us moving agriculture out, which is kind of how wineries have been, and they're great because they're giving us jobs, and like we want to do the same thing in cannabis. But cannabis, in the history of our cannabis farmers, we have been the backbone of the underground, the last free market. And so what I want to see happen for cannabis, and my dream for cannabis, is to see us taking the money that we're sending out through distribution back in collaborative efforts to bring money to our local small businesses.
Hi, so my name is Todd Handler, and my brother Eric and I have recently joined a venture here. And I'd like to echo what Kristen was saying. It's really important that we do support the community in all respects, and certainly having an industry that can promote the labor force that's here and have them be able to participate in the local economy on a regular basis. I guess it's just generally, whatever the county feels we can do to be available to do that.
Right, that's awesome, because at the presentation yesterday, I think that we did get a comment, and someone asked, what is the vision of the cannabis and, cannabis here in Lake County? And I think that with appointing the task force, that's something that definitely should come out, what the vision and goal is of the cannabis.
Yeah.
The county ordinance here really only needs to have in it the stuff that's going to be specific to the county, separate from what the state's already requiring. And I think that'll streamline this a lot, and it'll also cut down on a lot of confusion within the planning department and between planners and applicants.
Yes, ma'am.
What I would love to see is somebody in the county develop a little spot on the county website that has all your public notices. Because right now I have to either pay for Record B, which I won't, or I have to drive up here to look in the hallway to see if there's something, and it's an hour and a half round trip. But if you could put all your public notices in one spot, all of us could go see it. It would totally fulfill your designation to have to tell the public about what's there, and then we would be able to know, straight up front, and it would just make so much more sense.
Do you believe that hoop houses are allowed?
For outdoor.
Well, yes, for outdoor. But if hoop houses also are valuable in keeping moisture, which is what, and protecting the grows and the plants and such, I think that it just should be worded maybe a little better. I wrote some comments about that, but that's one thing I just wanted to understand if hoop houses were going to be allowed. My understanding, they are not allowed right now, and therefore they may be considered to be allowed in here. That's my one question. And another big question is this new ordinance going to address the NOA from the Water Board date of October 31st, 2020? Is that gate going to open up after that?
Right, those are excellent questions. They're very good questions. Okay, thank you very much for taking the time to review the video. Those were some of the comments that we did receive at the May 25th and May 26th workshops. We did capture that in the presentation that I would like to present to you right now. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. So the reason I'm before you today is to request that you appoint or review the application to appoint or approve a task force for the commercial cannabis permitting activities enforcement for Lake County. In consideration of a proposed task force, we will be addressing stakeholders with concerns in the areas of the community, land use and zoning, and the environment. Recommendations, CDD is making a recommendation for a 9 committee member task force. Originally, I understand from our previous meeting that we were proposing 7, possibly 9. So there were areas where there may have been some confusion as to whether or not CDD was recommending a 7-member committee or a 9-member committee. And I am proposing a 9-member committee, and these are my recommendations. 1 committee member should come from the tribal government. 1 should come from the Lake County Cannabis Alliance. 1 member should come from a northeast or northwest quadrant of Lake County. 1 community member should come from the southeast or southwest quadrant of the county. There should be a community organization group member that's appointed to the task force. I believe there should be a member from the Planning Commission. There should be a member from the Agriculture Commissioner. The Agriculture Commissioner should be appointed, and I apologize if that was an error when I submitted my memo. There also should be a law enforcement officer or the code enforcement officer from the Roadmap Task Force appointed to the committee. I do understand that there may be some policy issues as it relates to appointing county employees to advisory committee boards. So that's something that we would need further clarification and discussion. And I'm also recommending a peer reviewer to be appointed to the committee as well. And that could be a consultant from one of the Lake County's consultants retainment list. Some of the other members, I think that should be a part of the task force, but not necessarily a part of appointed, however, but should have input into the recommendations of the task force. It would include 19 various employees. That would include county council. Of course, we would need them to assist us with preparing the regulatory standards. CAL FIRE, I'm recommending that too, from a district that we would have to further discuss. I recommend 2 board of supervisors to be appointed to this committee. Originally, when I started here 7 months ago, there was a community development team that is composed of 2 board of supervisor members. And my recommendation would be to also include 2 of those members back on the team, but not on the actual task force itself. My recommendation would be to include a university system representative, and my rationale for that particular recommendation is that there are a lot of studies going on at UC universities that are doing research in this particular area, and I think their input would be very valuable to the county. I recommend that the cannabis control officers for the Roadmap Task Force, which would include the Sheriff Department as well as CDD, be a part of the team. The sheriff, of course, Lake County Sheriff. Cannabis consultants, LACO right now, that are assisting us with writing and preparing our staff reports for proposed cannabis projects. I recommend that the CDD Cannabis Program section staff would be a part of this. This would include Andrew Amalong, our Cannabis Control Program Manager, as well as his staff. I recommend that the Department of Public Works, Water Resources department would appoint someone to be a part of this team, non-advisory team, and also someone for the Chamber of Commerce, because I hear a lot of requests for tourism and events, and I think that because the Chamber of Commerce is specialized in that area, that they would make a great team member as well. And I just wanted to go back and just say, in terms of the Planning Commission, I highly recommend that a Planning Commission or two are appointed to the task force, because a lot of the times when we bring staff reports before the board for decision-making purposes, they are on the front line. And I think that being a part of the discussions behind the scenes and all the issues and challenges that we address during those meetings, it would be valuable to have a team member from the Planning Commission on the task force. In terms of issues or challenges that should be discussed during the task force, and the first category under land use and zoning, I will admit that I did add this first bullet: cannabis structures requiring a building permit eligible fire fees, that came from Sabatier from the hearing earlier today. So that was just added this earlier today. We like to review hoop houses, ADA standards and requirements, setbacks for non-cultivation areas, buffers for waterways, exclusion zones, fencing and vegetative screening, and co-location of permits and clustering for review and land use and zoning challenges. In terms of the environment, my recommendation is for regulatory controls to be considered for hydrology, water usage, management plan criteria being added to energy, renewable energy generators, fire and disaster planning, environmental impacts, and agricultural. Also should be to the task. In terms of community, my proposal is that we add transportation standards, mitigation of odor, noise, and dust, that we revisit criminal background checks, that we include more involvement with tribal consultation groups, and that we look at retail standards that relates to micro businesses and non-cultivating projects, also delivery and dispensaries. The other things that I have, that I recommend that we should look at are the regulations and making sure that the ordinance is consistent with the Department of Cannabis Control, and that one of the comments in the video stated that if we could place public policies on our websites as it relates to our recommendations with staff reports, and that's definitely something we can do without a task force. And also, I have already shared the comments from the May 25th and May 26th workshops with the Board of Supervisors. In terms of application, the application for a task force member have already been uploaded into Granicus. We have already started receiving some applications, but I just wanted to review the policy for the advisory board, in that no member or any advisory board, commission, or committee shall participate in, making, or in any way attempt to use their position to influence a decision in which he or she knows or has reason to know that he or she or their spouse has a financial interest. So I just wanted to review the policies. The policies are attached to the application itself. My recommendations for application deadline would be that we could accept applications up until June 16th, and that I can present the application back before the board. The board can make the actual appointment for the task force at the July 14th Board of Supervisors hearing, and that our first meeting for the task force could begin as early as July 21st. And that pretty much concludes my presentation, and I'll take any questions from the board at this time.
Thank you, Mary. Supervisor Pyska?
There's a lot here that wasn't in our board packet, and I'm not really prepared to have the discussion right now on changing these tactics. I don't know how you feel, but I need some time to think about this. I don't know the difference between a task force and a team and how they work together. I don't understand that. There's been a lot of changes since reviewing the agenda.
Vice Chair Scott?
For me, I think we need to be focusing on the task force members. Mary gave us a lot of information. I think it was a lot of extra information just for our knowledge of what she's wanting to do and move forward. I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong. But I think ultimately, we just need to make the decision that we want to have a task force and what that task force is going to look like, the makeup of it. And do we agree with what she's laid out here, what those 9 members need to look like? I think that's what we really need to agree on today so we can start taking applications and get that process moving. I think that's the most important thing today.
Supervisor Sabatier?
Yeah, no, I'm going to focus on the task force because I think that there's always the ability to get feedback from certain departments, such as our sheriff or code enforcement, things like that. And so I think there's always going to be some review mechanisms or the ability for input to come to us. I'd like to simplify a lot of it. I appreciate the idea of getting a planning commissioners involved, but I know that to me that might be asking a lot from a planning commissioner. I know that there's already quite a bit on their plate, and the review of this will eventually get to them as well before it's finalized. In my mind, I just to simplify things, I think that having an even keel lobbyists, so Lake County Cannabis Alliance and the Farm Bureau, I think that makes it a balanced approach. Having the Ag Commissioner, just because we are talking about ag and we need to make sure that we look at this from in my opinion, look at this from the perspective of how does ag work. But having all of the other positions, I think that is not necessary other than maybe having 2 supervisors on there, but even that I think those 3 positions are the only really key ones, and then the rest is just conversations to bring the information to the committee. This is I want to make sure that we're moving forward and not starting from scratch, and also not looking at this as if it's a because again, the invitation to the sheriff, I think that we can have a conversation, but having a sheriff member seat, I think that's not necessary. I think that's it's a commercial activity that is legally allowed here in the state of California. There's specific rules and regulations, and I think that we just need to make sure that what we create is reviewed by those departments, and then input provided, but not necessarily having to have them as a member of the task force. So I would say 5 is what I'm offering.
Instead of 9?
Yeah.
Supervisor Simon? You have anything?
Looking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think the 9 number's off. It's just, like we said, focusing on who needs to be. I definitely agree with the Farm Bureau being an opportunity there. I know that Director Darby, you mentioned someone from Department of Cannabis Control. Can you remind me who you were thinking on that, or is that just a label? I thought you had mentioned something in the past that someone had worked for Department of Cannabis Control that might be interested in it.
In terms of the DCC, we did have a representative that's interested in helping us develop our ordinance to be specifically designed for Lake County.
All right, thank you. And, I just have a difference of opinion. I think a planning commission being on this is a good recommendation. So I'm good with the 9, and I would agree with, like you said, maybe law enforcement, and taking law enforcement out and just be code enforcement there, because they're going to be probably the initial ones first dealing with all this. So I like the 9 number, but adding the Farm Bureau. And where were you potentially, so we have a community member?
So we would actually have 3 different community members. So if you look at the, you're not looking at my screen anymore. So I have a community member that's going to represent the northeast and northwest quadrants.
Can you put that
And then one
back?
for the southeast and
so that's on
southwest
there.
quadrants.
It's not on here.
And then I added a community organization group as a member. So you would have like 3 actual community members that's a part of the task force.
Well, maybe instead of that 3rd action group, maybe it's the Farm Bureau that we need to have in that seat?
I definitely
Well-
think the Farm Bureau needs to be on there.
Can you put that slide back up? So
Yes,
we can
ma'am.
see,
Second.
please? Thanks.
Can you see it?
Not yet.
Not yet, it'll come up.
Looks like it's loading.
And I think we have to remind the
There
public
we go.
too, that even though we may pick this 9-member team, this is open to the public, right? This conversation will be open for anybody to engage.
Yes, absolutely. All the meetings will be Zoomed. Even the team that I'm recommending that review the recommendations of the task force, I added that team because when the first draft of the ordinance was prepared, I was not authorized to release the ordinance until it was reviewed by the Board of Supervisors. I would like to have the opportunity to receive input for some of the other county employees prior to providing comments back and forth to the task force or to the Board of Supervisors.
So we've got, on this 9-member list, the only staff, we have the Ag Commissioner, we have Planning Commissioner, and we have Code Enforcement. So how do the other department heads, like Water Resources and the rest of CDD, interact with this group?
So they won't necessarily interact with this group directly. From CDD's point of view, we would actually send out the recommendations to the task force, to the other team, the operating other department heads and the second team that I listed, for just review and input from the recommendations from the task force.
Supervisor Sabatier?
And I'll add back in, I appreciate the comments from Supervisor Simon. I made a mistake, and yes, I think having a public member and providing the input from a public perspective is going to be important as well. And I'm okay with if there's a planning commissioner on there. I was just being cautious for the fact that they do get paid for the specific meetings they get to, and they wouldn't be paid for the meetings that we're asking them to be a part of here. So that's why I was being cautious. But I think their perspective is also going to be necessary. But I think that I agree with the comment made by Director Darby about interaction with the water resources. I just think it gets really complicated when you have too many people on the list, but it's very available to have that level of communication with any and all departments to get their feedback as we progress through the revision.
I have another comment. So is there a way, this question's for Anita. I know she's trying to make sure that we have community members from all sections or 2 sections of our community. Is there a way we can say that we would like to have somebody from the Northeast and somebody from the Southeast, like recommended, but if we're unable to fill those community positions in those certain areas, we can fill that community position with another address, so we can keep that a little bit open, because I think sometimes I get concerned when we make it too small for a community to get involved, we don't get the proper applications, and then that spot is vacant.
I think that you can address it from an, if possible type of scenario. It appears here what you're looking for are just community members without any particular affinity for or against locations, et cetera, just kind of members at large, but from particular locations. So I think you can, if it is possible.
I would like to see that, just so we don't have a vacant spot.
So if we're looking at this list and we're adding 2 Board of Supervisor members, and we're also adding the Farm Bureau, then
I don't think we're adding the Board of Supervisors to this.
we're not
No.
this
No.
list, so it's going to be the working or the other team?
Yes,
Yeah.
it would be, yes.
Okay.
So the other team would not actually have a vote in the task force. It would only be a task force group. I can put the other list up as well if you like.
And then I was actually looking at number 5, the community organization group, instead of being the Farm Bureau. Changing that, so it's them. But
I would agree, yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay.
And then if you took away the Northeast and Northwest, your comment would be.
But we only have 2 on that, Mary, so hold on.
2 community members, right? That's what you're looking for in 3 and 4?
Two community members.
It would just say 2 community members, right?
Well, I would like to see if we couldn't get that, but have it open where this is what we would like. But if we don't get that, then
Open.
it's, but I don't know if I have a third person willing to change that farm.
Yeah, yeah.
I've already stated the Farm Bureau.
And so then number 8 is code enforcement only?
I wanted both. My list is somewhat similar.
I guess you could keep it open and we can decide when it comes to us.
I think, of course, you got tribal government, I agree with that. Where it says Cannabis Alliance, I'd like to see cannabis industry focusing on cultivation, cannabis industry focusing on processing, non-cultivation. Community member North Shore, community member South Shore, or however quadrant, law and code enforcement, environmental organization weighted on biological aspects, agricultural such as the Farm Bureau, vineyard owner or farmer, and then the consultant, I think it's the same, it's just different, a name that I have weighted on water hydraulical.
So what's the number that you're looking at for a board?
I have 9 or 10 because of the code enforcement and law enforcement split.
But you broke up the number 2 to like 4 different.
Just 2. So I did, instead of having the Cannabis Alliance, I have cannabis industry cultivation and processing. And then, so it is, I think it is 11 because I added code enforcement and law enforcement. But
I guess I get concerned when it gets too big and then we have a hard time getting everybody to be able to, with their calendars, get someplace.
So I had that thought too on cultivation and processing, but I'm hoping that just the Cannabis Alliance representative can speak to all of those and have that background.
Because what you're going to get, what you're going to get with community members is the loudest anti-person. That's what's going to happen. So we need to have a balance. I would like to see 4 community members, pro and anti. I mean, I know what you mean about too many people, but for me, I like having a balanced effort of voices and not kind of stacking it either way. I know we're not trying to do that, but sometimes the applications will come that way, and that's just my opinion, though. And I think I'm the only one that wants a lot more, so I don't have
Everyone's else scratching off, you're adding.
I like a smaller board to make sure we can get a quorum to be able to have a meeting. So that's when things get extended.
Oh, Susan?
Susan, yes.
May I ask a clarifying question? Because looking at the title on this agenda, it says consideration of task force / and/or, I'm assuming you meant and/or ad hoc committee. Is this team a task force or is this team the ad hoc committee?
So my recommendation is that it's a task force. However, in-house, I've been seeing the terminology ad hoc. So when I / that means, and like it's all one and one terminology. But if we only had to use one terminology, I would use task force or ad hoc, one or the other, but it's not 2 separate entities.
So, if I may, I understand what task force ad hoc is just truly a descriptor that goes to duration. And ad hoc is for a particular purpose. Once its goal of that particular purpose is achieved, then the ad hoc committee dissolves. So that's the point of ad hoc. And I'm sorry to be dim, but I'm lost as to, is team different? Mm-hmm. So team is something else entirely. Okay, just so that everyone knows, you've got 2 essentially competing groups. And the only one that's on the agenda is the ad hoc task force. Right. So if you're going to do a team, you'll have to take that up and populate it, unfortunately, at another time, because it's not on the agenda item. But the other part of this is that an ad hoc is going to have to be Brown Act compliant if it's populated by members of the public. And in both cases, these will both be. So, which is fine. I mean, it's good to have public involvement. I'm just wanting to make sure that you understand it doesn't matter what you call it.
Okay.
Thank you. So my strategy and logistics for these meetings, they will be Brown Act compliant. Every meeting will have a Zoom component to it, so the public could comment and be a part of the meetings. The meetings would actually take place where public comments could be taken at the beginning of the group hearing meeting, as well as the end. And I am looking into possibly if there would be another spot during the middle of our conversations where the community would be able to comment.
So I see the way it's written right now is that the cannabis industry has only one seat, and with the Ag and the Farm Bureau, there's 2 seats, and then 2 members of the public. So I feel like we need to leverage the experience of our industry more by having a little bit more participation.
Right. That's why I wanted to see from, yeah. Because I think the specialized are going to be the folks like the environmental organizations. They're going to look at it from the view of whatever's biological aspects. And at sometimes, they have their own specific goal at hand. Tribal governments will be focused on cultural aspects, water, hydrology. But when it comes to the others, there's also, that's their livelihood, so naturally.
Right, and they've got the experience of the last several years.
So then my question would be, instead of having a peer review, a consultant from the Lake County hydrologist list, instead of having them have a seat on the board, just having them there to help direct instead of having a seat, have a voice?
Well, maybe they would be on the team side of it, or...
To be available for...
Yeah, I think that's the seat that we could change. And maybe we have Cannabis Alliance, and then we have an industry at large seat that's available, and then we've got two members giving their experience to this group, so it's not just one perspective.
I like that.
So we changed number 9 from peer review to, what was your suggestion language?
A cannabis industry.
Cannabis industry.
And then hopefully the person from the alliance and the industry have different backgrounds.
And maybe we should make that known on when they fill out their applications, to really let us know what side of the industry you're on, what knowledge you have, so we can make that proper decision. I'm good with that, yeah, I'm good with that.
So I'm not hearing any other comments, so I'll open it up for, Supervisor Sabatier?
I'll just make my final comments. With the status of where the industry has gone to, where we are today, the amount of people we're looking to incorporate in this and the amount of time spent to make this happen, I think it's gotten overly complicated for something in my mind, and I don't know that we all agree on that, but it's just not that complicated. I just think it's too much for what needs to happen. So I'm kind of looking back. Granted, the industry failed as well, so maybe we failed at doing our ordinance, but we had a very small group that worked on the hemp ordinance, came back with the hemp ordinance and made it happen, and was able to work through that. And it was a very small group. I believe there was only 5 people on there. And we were able to bring back some recommendations by having it reviewed by all. And I just think this is looking at it from a very complex perspective. and a lot of time put into something that I'm not sure if we were completely wide open, how many new applications would be coming in right now. So that's my only concern, is the amount of effort and work put into this and asking people to take part in this when it's a completely different environment than it was. And yes, we do need to make some updates to this, but I just think this is a complicated way of doing it.
All right, is there anyone from the public that would like to speak on this? I'll open it up for public input.
Brian Martin, Lee County Sheriff. I'm going to start out by commending Director Darby. This is quite a task. She's been very proactive in her approach, and this is one of those issues where no matter what you do, you'll never make everybody happy, and it's extremely complicated. So kudos to her for taking this on and being so proactive. As far as having participation of law enforcement, I don't know that's the most appropriate thing to do for a couple reasons. The first reason being that this industry still has people in it that aren't really comfortable with law enforcement, and for this to be effective, I think you need a lot of public participation. I think going into a room and discussing your business details with law enforcement present in the room, knowing that we continue to have an obligation to take enforcement action when we're aware of a conduct that might run afoul of the law, might dissuade some people from participating in a way that would lead to a meaningful resolutions or outcomes for this. The other reason is if we're going to participate in our capacity as law enforcement, or my capacity as the sheriff, and somebody takes some action based on what they heard from one of these meetings, and it turns out it runs afoul of the law in some other manner, it puts us really in a weird situation. Despite the legality within California, some of the product that's grown in California ends up making its way out of state, and to put us in a position as law enforcement to say that we participated in discussions and told people how to do this, and it resulted in them getting arrested somewhere else or running afoul of laws right here in California, kind of puts us in a really awkward position. So I appreciate the invitation. I appreciate the consideration. I don't know that I would accept the invitation, so that might help address some of the numbers of the people on the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff Martin.
Richard Durham. Thank you. So 3 minutes is going to be really tough. I don't know where everybody's been, but I spent 3 years hammering out Article 72. We don't need 73. It's written horribly. If I was a teacher, I would flunk the student who wrote it. And I'll leave that alone. As far as the ad hoc committee, there's outdoor grow, mixed light, greenhouse, and indoor. We can't leave those people out. They each are going to have something to say about this. And I would recommend that we just go back to 72 and fix whatever we don't like. I mean, we don't need a whole new, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We already have it. I mean, I'm compliant. So are a lot of other farms. So what you're saying about 73 is that we're not compliant, or, I mean, we are. And there's things like, the background check we don't like. There's other things, that we can just work on those. And as far as the limiting the industry to 1 or 2 people in the discussion, I have a complete different style of growing than my neighbor. And for them not be able to come in and me to be able to make my points is just, it's not helping the industry. You're satisfying some bureaucracy. So I think we already have rules. If there's some that need to be changed, I'm all for it. And that you can use this committee to do that. But, there's stuff in there where all outdoor grows must be fully enclosed. I mean, who would write that? And who would leave it in the final version? If you read through it, you'll realize it's just words. We should just go back to 72, fix what we don't like, and move on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon, Chair Crandall, Vice Chair Scott, Supervisors. Erin McCarrick, Clear Lake, Vice President of the Lake County Cannabis Alliance. And thank you to the Community Development Department, for Director Darby, for everybody who's worked on this, everybody who came to the, the community visioning sessions, the feedback sessions. It was a clever way to get feedback, so appreciate that. Just echoing the same thing that has been discussed here, that there definitely should be more than one LCCA and/or cannabis industry representative on this. I'm a distributor, and my perspective is wildly different than a cultivator, than a dispensary, than a processor. There's things that when you look at the ordinance at the state level, at the county level, that just, unless you do it every day, you don't even know the regulations that affect you. So it's super important to have that. Our industry doesn't necessarily have a preference on law enforcement on there, so whatever works. And I didn't even think about the liability factor, but that might be an issue. Another issue that may be with the number 9, the hydrologist, is potentially conflict of interest. Like, everybody on here is gonna have an agenda coming into the ad hoc committee. And as we've seen with some of the appeals and some of the planning commission hearings, every hydrologist is different, and every hydrologist may be working for a farm or something. So maybe this is a way for Director Darby's academia to come into this conversation, is maybe there's somebody in the academic water world who has not consulted for a farm that could be number 9. If you'd like, I did 1 through 9, and you can also knock off the bottom 2 if you just want 1 through 7. Something that could work for us could be tribal, LCCA 1, LCCA 2, community member 1, community member 2, Farm Bureau / Ag, Planning Commission, that's 7, and then Board of Supervisors and Hydro / Academia, if that's of interest. The thing with having somebody from the Farm Bureau and somebody from the Ag Department is, as of now, we are still not necessarily declared Ag. It depends on who you talk to. It's vague. Some places we are Ag, some places we aren't, but we do not fall under the jurisdiction of the Ag Department in Lake County. And the Farm Bureau, the cannabis industry had tried to join it. People in the cannabis industry have tried to join the Farm Bureau and have not been accepted. So there's a bit of an inherent bias there. And as Chair Crandall said, the community members may be vocally against it. I'm not sure, right? So the deck would be a little stacked if there was a bunch of Ag and a bunch of community members out there in terms of conversation, right? We want to have a balanced conversation, and yeah, so thank you so much, everybody, for your work, and that is the feedback from LCCA and me.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Board of Supervisors, and Ms. Darby, thank you very much for putting on the work into a huge task. I'm going to try and stay pointed about the things that I want to bring forward. I think, without going too far or too far away from our conversation, I feel like we're making mountains out of molehills. I think that the county and the people here have spent a huge amount of time creating Article 72 to begin with. To see that completely scrapped is really sad, especially for the people that participated in it. I think that we could streamline things if we could focus on what we're trying to get done, which is create regulations that are workable and functionable, not just people's opinions. We're trying to find, how do we put these things into play? So if we looked at the aspect of cannabis as an agricultural crop, and then we look to the state as far as how those things are distinguished, defined, and ultimately processed through the law, I think that we would keep ourselves from having to rewrite our entire ordinance. And I'm not sure where we got to the point where we were just completely throwing out Article 72 and the years of time and effort that went into that. I remember a number of you guys were there for all of that, right? And so to see that completely go away seems just a huge loss, monetarily, not to mention the time. And the whole idea of all of this was to get to a point where we could streamline our processes so that we could process more applications, so we could bring up the economy of our county. And the idea of us doing that in a fashion that is about bringing more legal cannabis to the forefront was the whole point and purpose, I think, of us taking a look at the law or the Article 72 to begin with. And it seems like instead of us processing more permits, we've actually processed far less if you utilize the time and staff to rewrite the entire ordinance into now 73. So instead of processing more, we've processed less. Instead of streamlining it, we've covered it in red tape. I don't see how we're actually moving towards what I think all of us had talked about to begin with. And so with that, none of that is to be rude, and I try not to really base that just on my opinion. I'm just trying to look at what's happened and what has been going on. And so with that, I mean, no disrespect to Ms. Darby and anybody else involved in any of this. I'm just trying to really understand how we got to this point. You know, how did we wind up back here when the whole point of all of it, I thought, was to move forward. So instead of processing permits, we've slowed down permits. Instead of making it easier, we've strung up more red tape. I'll leave that alone. However, the ad hoc committee comes together. Ad hocs are good. They've used them and focused them balancedly. Thank you.
Thank you. It looks like we have a hand up from phone number 6205. If you can unmute.
Hello, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Thank you so much. This is Bart Levinson. I am not hearing the voice of the people who live here represented in these meetings and in this room. And I'm not hearing from you, the supervisors, the voices of the people that you've heard from for years now coming to your town halls. Who have had a lot to say about how their quality of life has been impacted and their concerns about the additional fire risk that the growing industry brings to the county, the road degradation, and the issues of wells going dry and drought. And I'd like to see that the town halls that have heard the years of testimony and experience of the citizens already here be somehow included, so that what you arrive at is what I think you're intending, which is bringing the industry into the county in a sustainable way that the county can actually manage, it can grow, and the citizens who live here feel good about living here with it. So I'm asking each of you supervisors, please, to speak up and say something about your town halls and make sure that the people from each of your town halls are represented on this task force. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I can speak from my town hall. This is not an issue that we've been discussing. And on the task force, we have 2 seats for community members. So I think.
And we have public members who have spoken today who have lived here for a very long time. And so not sure how we're not hearing from our community.
Yeah.
And I think we have to remember, we heard from our community when this was voted on, and that's why we're here, because the community voted to make this legal in Lake County, and that's why we're moving forward, trying to develop something that works.
All right. Looks like we have another hand up from Betsy Kahn. If you can unmute.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Thank you. You know, I have a completely different perspective on this, as you can imagine. My concern is that we've created a specialized kind of a permitting process that deviates from the basic CEQA system. The traditional permitting process for major use permits requires that the initial study include an analysis from the Department of Water Resources. If the Department of Water Resources is not capable of providing the level of analysis that you need, then I think it's that department's responsibility to identify the kind of qualified consulting service or specialization that would enable us to protect our natural resources. The Agricultural and Natural Resources Service from UC Davis might be able to help us with this, but I really hate turning it into this kind of a little local, competition. And I agree with a lot of the things that Ms. Levinson said about the fire and, other related issues. I'm not saying that the CEQA process is really the basis of our understanding. I hear all the competition, but I'd like to see it handled in a straightforward fashion. Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer Smith.
Good afternoon. This is Jennifer Smith, president of the Lake County Cannabis Alliance. We, the industry, have advocated for a long time to streamline the application process and align more with state policy. I think doing this through the ad hoc committee is the best way to do it, because since we've written Article 72, the state has implemented regulations as well as they've changed those regulations. And I think the more that we can align and streamline the process is the actual goal of this. I don't want to see this get bogged down in committee. I want this to be functional and moving forward. Therefore, people that this affects in terms of its application should definitely, be involved and have more than one seat. Long-term personal goal would be to be in the Department of Ag. I think this notion that we're not agriculture because of commercial transactions has got to be figured out, both at the local and state level. But there are things in agriculture that apply to us that we should be able to take advantage of, i.e. ag exempt buildings. A building's a building. It doesn't matter what the crop is that it's protecting. And I think that this is the task force where we can flush some of this stuff out. While I appreciate a lot of agencies and other departments being involved, I'm not so sure they need to be involved in the day-to-day operation of an ad hoc committee. I think that they should be consulted and their opinions brought back in. And I think that taking that perspective might streamline this list a little bit. But this is the list just went away. It's definitely an important feature to have views from the community. But if the end goal is to create regulations, whether it's a revision or a new regulation, we're not going to we should not be getting bogged down in should cannabis be here, right? Like the toothpaste is already out of the tube. And so I think if we have non-industry representation, that needs to be very clear. We're here to regulate. We're here to have safe environmental practices. The state regulates those safe environmental practices. We adhere to water board standards and we adhere to Department of Pesticides. So let's let the state do their job. Let's let the county have a zoning ordinance and let's build that ordinance in this ad hoc. And let's be proactive to regulate the industry, but not regulate how we farm. Let's have an application process streamlined. I'm a little passionate about this. Not very well spoken today, but I hope that we can get this down to, at maximum 7 members, because we're going to have a real hard time getting a quorum of many more. Thanks.
Thank you. I don't see anybody else with any hands up, so I will, if there's, yes, come back up and state your name for the record. And
Erin McCarrick, Clear Lake, just 30 seconds. I was driving in, so I was on Zoom, so I might have missed it. Are you guys deciding today what the timeline is for the application? Does that happen today? Just wondering.
yes, go ahead, Johanna.
So I suggest that we do the application deadline on the 15th instead of the 16th, because I was planning on posting on Thursday. So unless you want me to post on Friday, I think it should be the 15th rather than the 16th.
Would that be an issue, Ms. Darby?
We can't hear.
They're on mute, I think.
And I think she had us for July 15th for the selection. So the closing was in June. And so it wouldn't be on the agenda.
It was going to be back on the 21st.
So I'm sorry, my dates are off. The appointment of the task force, I think my conversation with Johanna was the 21st. That's an error. We were actually, that would give like a week. I think we calculated a week and some days for that. These dates.
So the application deadline would be June 15th, and then it would be back on the board agenda for the 21st of June for appointment.
That's correct.
Okay, so it's, okay, it says July, right? And that's where it was, okay, got it. All right. So applications to be received, and then the 15th would be the date, right? And then the 21st would be, all right,
The 21st of June.
Yeah.
yes, 21st of June, okay. Does that cover that? Are you guys on the same page?
Yeah,
all right.
sorry.
Okay. And so with that, I don't see any other public comments, so I will close it and bring it back to the board. Supervisor Pyska?
So just, when we started having these conversations a year ago, the intent was to streamline the process, and we've heard that in several comments today. And I think that, for me, is the biggest priority, and I don't know if that's everyone's main priority here, is to just take, we have something, we want to make it better, we want to move, we want it streamlined. And so I think defining the task for this task force is really important. And when I'm looking at the composition, we do have code enforcement up there, but code enforcement is under CDD, and CDD is running this task force. So I think that's one that we could eliminate because they're already going to be there with staff. Trying to remember who else is on there. If we can somehow just get it down to 7.
And so
Is that what we're at? We were at 9?
we were at 9, yeah.
Yeah, can you, Mary, can you
Is
put
it
the-
not showing? Let me share again. I'm sorry.
There you go.
So we're going to have code enforcement participating through CDD. So I think that number 8 could go away if you all agree with me.
Oops, you got rid of agricultural commissioner.
Just a second.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. And Aaron had suggested cannabis industry 1, cannabis industry 2, community member 1, community member 2.
Farm Bureau and Ag Commissioner.
Yeah, and then that doesn't give us an even amount, but it brings the number down a little bit.
Ag County, the Cannabis Alliance 2, for that one, number 2.
Well, we had industry 1 and industry 2, and hopefully one of them would be Cannabis Alliance, I think. But then if we want accurate representation from the industry, then maybe we need 3 because we have cultivation, distribution, and retail, right? Those are 3 really different components that we're trying to work on.
In my opinion, the Cannabis Alliance represents all of the above, people who are involved in every aspect of the industry. The public, which means anyone from the industry, no matter what your license type is eligible to come and provide a 3-minute comment or whatever that public comment time will be. And I think that's the job of why we're inviting the Lake County Cannabis Alliance, because they have the ability to be the spokesperson for any of those license types in order to sit down and figure out what the needs are. And I agree that part of this process was for streamlining, but I think that there are some issues with the ordinance as well, that while we're doing this, we can clean it up some. We've learned a lot as we've gone through some appeal processes and things like that. So I think that we shouldn't take what we've learned over the course of the last, I want to say, 1.5 or 2 years since the last big revision in order to make those changes happen, rather than streamlining it and still having those issues remain within the ordinance. So,
Well, streamlining and making it better.
Yeah.
That's what I said. So both of those things.
But I think that there's so many license types. I mean, I think there's 13, 14. I'd hate to see one position for each one. I really think that is the job of the Farm Bureau. It doesn't matter if you are growing wheat, if you're growing pears, if you're growing grapes, you're able to represent that industry as a whole. That is my expectation of the Lake County Cannabis Alliance.
Okay, so 2 from the industry, 2 from the community, Farm Bureau, Ag. And then do we need a planning commissioner? I mean, I think it's probably
That's the one I
good.
would say, if we're trying to get to 7, then
Yeah.
I'd say we pull out the planning commission. I would be in favor of that. Leave
And-
the ag
You either
commissioner in there.
I would
Yeah.
say you either pull that one off or add 2 planning commissioners, so you have, and I don't know how we're choosing the folks that we're picking, but I know for me, if I choose a planning commissioner, I'm gonna look at their voting record and see which one's more pro and anti, and appoint one of each.
Well, I would hope that we all look for a balanced approach rather than one side or the other. And just want to speak real quick about the agricultural commissioner. To me, our agricultural commissioner is a neutral party in this. They have a large portion of the Farm Bureau, and they also have a large portion of what cannabis is. It's a plant that is grown in the ground, and they have knowledge of what is the processes and what is available through law and code that both can utilize. So I see the Ag Commissioner as the equalizer for that, and the Farm Bureau and the Cannabis Alliance being equal. So I think it would be even easier to just provide one spot for the Cannabis Alliance rather than 2. I just think smaller is better and it's more efficient.
Well, then I would say 1 community member then.
Yes.
I don't agree with 1 community.
No, I think you need to keep 2 community. I think we need to keep the tribal, the Cannabis Alliance, 2 community members, farm, agriculture, and another from the cannabis industry.
I'm just concerned about having a majority of community members if you've got 1 representative from each. So if we kept the way it is here, but we took off the planning commissioner, then we're at 7, and then we've got,
And I don't think that the DCC should be a voting member, absolutely an invited guest to be a expert to provide information. I love the fact they want to be involved, but they should not be voting for our local ordinance.
right.
I'm good with it set up that way, right there with those 7.
I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good too. So then what is the task of the task force? I think we should have kind of a united.
She laid it out a little bit.
Right.
Number of task members.
Do you have a slide on
Review-
that, Mary?
Review,
Yes.
discuss, consider, and develop guidelines for regulatory solutions surrounding commercial cannabis concerns in the following areas, and then it goes through the
It's
3 items.
land use, environment, and community, and then she broke those down.
Okay.
So
Supervisor Simon, go ahead.
I think directly to your point, the question is, are we streamlining 72 or we're creating 73? That's that's what you're asking right now, right?
Well, I think that one is not as simple as that, because I think pulling it out of 72 and making it easier for people to access rather than scrolling through 300 pages of Article 72, so you could just carbon copy what's in 72 for cannabis and put it in Article 73 to at least make it easier to find and access, and then tweak what is now Article 73. So I think 72 and 73 could be the exact same thing, but we're looking for streamlined, for processing. I mean, not just for the industry, but for our staff, to not have to go through so much process when some of that process could be done by the state or is unnecessary for us to do, and also looking at fixing some of the things that need to be fixed. And
And I think those pain points need to be identified too before you get too far into the weeds. Like, what is it that needs to be fixed? Like, yes, we need to streamline. Yes, there's a lot of good work here, but what exactly are those issues that have been causing everybody pain, our department pain? And, what is it that's not working, and identify those kind of right off the bat, so then you know what work you have to do.
You kind of did that though.
Well,
I'm sorry, Supervisor. So what I've identified in the 1, 2, and 3, the 3 different categories, those are the issues that I've heard the most, or comments that I received from, or comments I received from the workshops. So like if you have here the land use and zoning, you'll see hoop houses are concerned, the setbacks are concerned, buffers, exclusion zones, fencing, and permitting. Those are some of the highlights of the issues that we've been receiving for that particular category. And then under the environment, of course, water usage, a drought management plan criteria, fire, environment, energy, and agricultural standards.
And if I can interrupt, I think that, yes, streamlining, but if we say fix and we only say specific things to fix, I think we're restricting the ability of the committee to truly make substantial change that will affect in a positive way.
Right.
So I think that I like what's lined out right now, and I think that even that should be limited. And let's see what the committee comes back with. But our goal is to enhance and streamline in protecting the industry and protecting our communities and being more efficient in our processing of these applications. That's what I would say is just the main goal. The more specific we get, the more restrictive the committee is from actually making the changes that might need to be made.
Fully agree with that statement.
And I'm fine with what the result is of the composition of the committee itself. I think that works.
Yep.
All right.
But a very tall task, the whole thing as a whole. There's a lot of passionate people on all sides of this, and Director Darby, I thank you very much for taking on this task.
Thank you.
All right.
I'll have to say I'm a little concerned about the comment about people wanting to join the Farm Bureau and their applications being denied. I just wanted to put that out there.
Some things take a little bit more time than others.
Still concerned. That's wrong.
Oh, from that video? All right, is there any other, you have your pen up?
It was permanent.
So we have the makeup, instead of 9, it's 7, and then the laid out goals, like you mentioned, that basically had a consensus.
I think we should just approve the task force,
Yeah.
right? That's where we're going. We're not adding,
Nope.
we're not adding any limitations. We're just approving the task force.
I agree. Just approving the task force.
Okay.
And the direction
Which was,
on the slides
okay.
that she's prepared.
I think only on our agendas we're able to approve the
Yeah.
task force, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
that's what
Okay.
we're doing today. It's, yeah.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve. Oh, I didn't see a pen.
Go ahead, man. You started. Go ahead, bro.
It was hiding behind his second laptop.
That's all right.
I move to approve the current composition as shown on the screen for the revision of the cannabis ordinance.
Second.
So I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you for that, Ms. Darby, and thank you, everybody, for coming for that item. We will, it's laid out for the 15th, and that will be the date when everybody accumulates the applications, and then
Submit your apps.
thank you, Johanna, for that input as well. Okay.
Thank you.